Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. We are live on Discord with a wonderful crowd of our patrons. It is lovely to see all of you. If you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or just join our Discord. I am Kevin Lieber, and with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, and we have to start out on a little bit of a somber note, don't we?
A big somber note. Yeah, a colossal moon-sized somber note. Yeah, for sure.
I was thinking about it, and I think it's truly the most somber thing we've had. Number two, it would be when Grant passed, King of Random. But we hadn't had Grant on the podcast. We just knew him outside of it. We actually lost a friend this week.
Yeah, we lost Cripp Daddy a couple of days ago now, and he was obviously on the podcast. So, if anybody is unfamiliar with his work and what he was about, definitely check that out. Look up the Cripp Daddy episode that we did, but we knew him for years, to talk to him really from kind of the beginning when he was just starting out and really getting into doing comedy more formally and more seriously. And this year was such a big year for him in so many respects. There were so many things that he did this year that were really remarkable for, someone who was in his physical state. Like if people are not familiar with Donavan, he was unable to walk. He really couldn't sit up very well. So the chair that he was in was on a very steep incline. He couldn't fly because, he
talking about that.
Yeah, we talked about what an absolute terrible nightmare it is for any handicapped person to fly. They do not treat those chairs well at all. They get damaged. And then
what happens when you land and you come out of the chair that you absolutely need for every facet of life, and it's bounced around the cargo hold and it's in 7 pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not something you can even remotely test. So he couldn't do that.
No.
But he was traveling around. He was doing stand-up. He was making a lot of connections. He was collaborating with a lot of serious comedians and YouTubers. A lot of great stuff.
Yeah, he was in with Compound Media, which Anthony Cumia runs that, and he's a legend in that space. With going back to the Opie and Anthony show, but they embraced Donavan and his style, which is quite a good fit for the Compound guys. But he was making it. I mean, everything that he'd wanted to do, he was progressing on. He released an album. Like a month ago, was it? I mean, it wasn't that long ago at all.
Last month, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did his thing at the Gathering, the Juggalo event, which I know he'd wanted to do for some time. But all the stuff that he'd spent the last few years working up to was starting to kick off for him. It really was going exceptionally well, and he'd done a couple stand-up shows, in the last year. It was just paying off. So on one hand, you'd like to have seen him experience more of that because he was getting to where he wanted to be. On the other hand, he did have a chance to get there. He got there, and that's something too. Donavan would want us to be happy that there's one less Mexican taking an American comedy job now. I think it's important to point that out. But if you are newer to the podcast and not familiar with Cripp Daddy, and you're already trying to find my home address and employer to cancel me for saying that, that's the sort of comedy that Donavan was famous for. I've been weirdly uncomfortable with this since Monday because, I'm seeing on Twitter, there are all of these tributes that feel more about like the person is trying to show that they had a personal connection more than they're honoring Donavan. It's like this weird, like, grief grifting kind of thing. Now, nobody I know personally did this, which is nice. So, and like, there's a circle of people, a group of people that, I'd like to think are friends, that Donavan was in. We all had friendship with Donavan in common. Nobody did that, but a lot of fringe people did. And I'm like, I'm not gonna. I don't need to do this. Now, Kevin, your tweet about Donavan was exceptional. Can you summarize that?
Yeah.
Do you even want to say it out loud?
Well, sure. Because I think it's important. Well, one of the things I agree with you. I think a couple of things. I think you see this, what you just described happens all the time with really sort of any sort of tragic event. People really want to make it about themselves. They just do. Like, how can I make this tragedy about me? I mean, I saw this a lot just recently with the tragic events in Hawaii, where, all of a sudden, like, people I went to high school with are posting photos of them just like in Hawaii from 15 years ago, being like, oh, I went to Hawaii once. My heart goes out to those affected. It's like, what are you doing? I don't know. I have a personal aversion to that sort of like, look at me behavior when it comes to like seriously catastrophic events. It's a bizarre, I think, narcissistic move to play, but I understand why people do it, because they feel like they have some sort of connection to this thing, so they want to publicize it. I do get that. Anyway, what I didn't like personally was like, man, I don't think there's anyone I've ever known. No, there's no one I've ever known who consistently wanted to just make fun of everything dark and macabre than Donavan. No one that I've ever known, like I never knew like Gilbert Gottfried, who famously was canceled as the Affleck duck for making a Japanese tsunami joke. But it's that kind of level. It's like whenever there's anything so taboo that no one even wants to discuss it, Cripp Daddy would make the perfect joke about the thing no one even wants to talk about.
He had the only time I can ever remember him pulling back on something had nothing to do with the joke or the humor. It was simply, is this going to get me banned on Twitter? Now he had 7-day bans,
which happened a lot,
a lot, and he would get brigades of people, especially people in the disabled community hated him. They hated his humor, and they would just brigade him and report him and get him banned and all that stuff. So he never said like, am I going too far here? No, there wasn't. No. It was either the funniest thing possible or not. And that was the only litmus test. And the one factor was, am I going to get shut down? Because then I can't be funny about anything.
Right.
That's a very real concern. But in terms of the humor, no, it's what is the absolute funniest take on this situation. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah, it's where's the line and how far can I go over it so that I can't even see the line behind me anymore. That's right. That was the game that he played every single day of his life. And what I was going to say is that a lot of the posts honoring him, paying tribute to him, were so serious and somber and about like what a good, nice, kind person he was, which he was,
yes.
Which he absolutely was. There is no doubt about that. There is no sort of blowing smoke about him after the fact, like, oh, he was such a great guy, and like meanwhile he was a total jerk. No. He was an incredibly sensitive and kind and thoughtful person. But I was like, we have to have some humor here, because if there's one person who you have to bring like levity and humor and just a joking spirit behind paying tribute to, it was Cripp Daddy. I was like, no one is being funny about this while also being sensitive about it, but you could do both. And that's what I tried to do with my tweet about him. Yeah.
Yeah, yours was fantastic. And Ricky Berwick also just pulled the perfect response. So he found somebody who a day or two before Cripp Daddy died was in one of those Twitter spats, just taking a dump on Donavan. So Ricky came in and replied to that person and just said, "You killed him."
Yeah.
And it was like, it was just perfect. It was like, you look at it and you're like, oh, this is what he would have wanted.
It's true. It is
just
true.
to ruin somebody's day like that.
Yeah, it is what he would have wanted. And that's what we needed more of. So one of his kind of classic go-to jokes was making fun of Eric Clapton's kid who like horribly fell out of a window to his death, who Clapton then really famously kind of immortalized and eulogized with his song Tears in Heaven during his Unplugged performance on MTV back in the 90s, which was incredibly, incredibly popular. Everybody knew this song, and the song was about his child who
I had the CD.
Yeah, it was a mega hit. So everybody knows this. So it's important to understand the joke, because everyone, at least in our generation, who grew up with like Tears in Heaven and Eric Clapton song, they knew of the story of his son, his kid falling out of a window to his death, which is just absolutely horrible and something that's so tragic. It changes your life. You would never get over. It's just unfathomably sad and horrific. So that's the thing that Donovan would joke about all the time. It's like, what is the one thing that a lot of people would find incredibly distasteful, that there's seemingly nothing funny about, that I can just make part of my humorous repertoire? And it was that.
I'm just, I'm laughing so hard thinking about Eric Clapton celebrating his death. Like Eric Clapton being thrilled that his nemesis is finally gone.
Right. You never used to hear another joke about his personal tragedy. Just it really blowing up on Twitter. Yeah.
But it was always funny too. It wasn't just like heckling on that for the sake of it. He made sure every one of the jokes was funny. But I'm also, I find it weird when people take, personal things out on like, not just like the personal connection thing, but like private moments with somebody. Like now that they're gone, it's all fair game. But I want to pull on this one because Donovan did allude to it when we talked to him on the show. He, especially as he had this really steady rise. We saw him when he was really funny on Twitter with a small audience, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and he gets into some spats that are just hilarious, and he's winning all of them, and it grows. All this is happening, and I had so many conversations with him about his self-doubt. It truly was like an imposter syndrome thing where he's like, a comedian who I've looked up to for 10 years just retweeted me. Like, how am I even close to this person's level? Like, I don't belong here. And he had this constant kind of just feeling of the imposter syndrome and the self-doubt. And every single time he blasted through that and did the most completely and totally fearless bit of art after it. And that is I can't even think of the right word for that because it's so beyond remarkable. Almost nobody wins that battle with themselves. That self-doubt crushes people. The lack of confidence crushes them. They never get beyond that. And then when they do, they're pulling punches, or they're, restrained in some way, or they're just plain tight about it. They're not going 100% with, what they can do with their art. So he went through just constant cycles of that feeling, then getting through it and just going like just full blown on his art. That's the best you can do. That's the pinnacle. Think of all the people we know, and even so many guests we've had on here where, they talk about a lack of self-confidence. And especially when they start to get worn down from the grind on stuff, it gets even harder to think, this is, I'm doing the right thing, whatever. I forget who tweeted just yesterday. Oh, it was Austin Evans about how, nothing feels worse than a 10 out of 10. A video that YouTube ranks as last in your last 10 videos. I mean, that stuff hits. And can you table it long enough to get that joke out about Eric Clapton's toddler son falling to his death? It's crazy to go through that and do it over and over and over again. And Donavan did that a little bit greater every time, which is why he was on the rise and getting these opportunities. That's like I said, it's just remarkable plus. I don't even know the word, but I can't name anybody else who has that same kind of fortitude to win that battle with themselves every time.
Yeah, I think, well, first, let me, before I comment on that, let me just say that the tribute post that I did for Donavan was to just say that I know that he's making fun of Eric Clapton's son to his face right now. Just because it just popped into my head, like, what's the first thing that he would do in heaven?
Find that
and just find that kid and just laugh in his face for falling out of a window like an idiot. That's what he would do. That's what he would do. Just a picture of that is so funny to me, and it brings me joy. It does. It brings me joy to think of him doing that in heaven. It comforts me in a, I don't know what that says about me, but it does. It makes me happy. It comforts me on a level to think that that's what he's doing right now, as he's moved on. But it's really important what you said, because no one really talks about those sort of inner demon doubts. And I think that there's probably a large misconception for the most part when it comes to successful creative types, thinking that, they're all supremely self-confident or, narcissists, or, just think that everything that they do is, God's gift to humanity. Well, that may be the case for some, but it is certainly not the case for all. There are plenty of creatives who just hate everything that they do, quite honestly, and think it's never good enough. The idea was better in their head than it turned out, in reality. Sure. Like, that's kind of like a constant struggle for creatives, I think. It's certainly something that I've dealt with forever, is you think you have a great idea, and then like the next day you're like, that sucks. I don't know why I thought that was so good. I mean, we have the extreme example of that happens in animation, which we've talked to Psychic Pebbles certainly about, and others, in which the fact is they have to rely upon that initial spark, because it takes months in order to turn a funny joke into an animation. And by then you really think it's not funny anymore, because it's been 3 months since you thought it was funny. And you
gotta commit. There's no choice.
You just have to commit and just trust your past self that, yes, past self was right. This was funny. And when new people see it, when they don't know the joke, they will think too that it is funny. And that is a really weird process to go through. But what is remarkable, I think, going back to what happened this past year for Donavan, is like, despite all of those challenges, I mean, you talk about when people want to come up with excuses for why they're not doing what they think they should be doing, and then you look at somebody like Cripp Daddy, you're like, how are those excuses holding up, friendo? Because here's a guy who had every excuse imaginable to pack it in and not even attempt to do things. And he was out there, put out an album. I wanted to say the name of the album so people can go buy it. Sports Illustrated Comedian Edition. That's the name of the album that he put out last month. And again, like, this guy was out there. He was doing it. He was traveling places. He was collaborating with people. He was getting up on stage, regardless of what his health condition was and how he was feeling, which, I mean, I imagine was never awesome. So
No, I think his best day was still a difficult day when it comes to doing all of this stuff. But two things on this. One is that when we're talking about the creators and Conrad points out, the JonTron thing he did not too long ago, that was huge. I mean, anyway, we talk about creators like who we've had on the show with the self-doubt and stuff like that. I look at it and say, this is what makes 99+% of people not do anything at all. They're so defeated by the inner thoughts and doubts and whatever that they never even begin anything. There are two levels of this. There are the people who, do it for a living and struggle with this. And then the ones who just, it's nipped in the bud.
But they also struggle with it. So that's why it's like kind of a silly non-dilemma to me. It's like, do you want to struggle with this and do nothing? Or do you want to struggle with this and do stuff?
Those are the two options.
It's not going away. It's not going away.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah. The other thing is that Donavan had a really good Twitter presence and YouTube as well. He was uploading stuff there. He could have stopped there and built that out. So that's, to me, that's a really important point, that it would have been a fine fit for his circumstances, which it was. He had a pretty good streamlined system. His friend Cole was eventually helping him out with it. Cole is somebody who, we have a lot of friends in common. He could have stopped there and just built like banger presences on those platforms, but he didn't. He wanted to do the album. He wanted to do the shows. He wanted to go beyond that, and that stuff was much, much, much harder than, like when he'd do a 2-minute conversation with his mom, where, it truly is a question of like hitting the record button and then hitting stop when it's over, and that stuff was incredible. It was really good material. But he wanted these other things that were, they required, a van that he could truly travel in. They required a great deal more work and sacrifice, and risk, risk, physical demands, all of it. And I was like, all right, well, keep pushing on this. So I really liked that arc because, he had a great thing going. He could have stayed in that lane. He didn't. He wanted a bit more.
Yeah.
And very few people would make that leap. I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the Leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately, I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and Liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description.
Yeah, that's why I think all of it is worth talking about. And again, if you aren't familiar with his work, I definitely highly recommend checking it out. Unless you're easily offended, in which case,
that's right.
Steer clear for the sake of your own delicate sensibilities. But one thing I do really want to highlight, because I do have personal experience with this, is how freaking terrifying doing stand-up is. It is so scary to do stand-up So also the fact that that's what he was doing. It's like one thing to tweet something. There are like virtually no consequences for typing some stuff out and hitting send, and then you go, microwave a hot pocket. Like what's scary about that? Nothing.
You carefully craft your little thing and do it on, when you feel like it's ready.
Yeah, you just craft it, put your little paper boat in the canal and send it on its way, and then you just, that's the end of it. But man, like traveling, I want to contextualize this a little bit. Like you book a thing, like you decide you're going to do an open mic, or you're going to decide you're going to do a show. So there's an anticipation for the date because you're going to do it. You're traveling there, you get there early, you like check out the place, you see who's there. Do people show up? How many? Probably not a lot. Do you have anybody with you who will be supportive of you, kind of regardless of how poorly you do, which will probably be pretty poorly because, you're most likely going to bomb. And then you get up there and just what you thought was funny isn't funny and it's not working. And, you're nervous. Are you looking at people? Are you looking down at the stage? Are you fidgeting with the microphone cable? Things get really awkward really quickly when you're up on that stage trying to make people laugh, which is just about the hardest thing. It's an insane endeavor to just be like, yes, I will walk up in front of a whole bunch of people and like elicit an emotional response from them due to the words that I say in the cadence and order that I decide upon. It's very weird. It is very, very weird.
Yeah, when you put it like that, it's not normal at all.
No, and it's super, super hard. Like, I mean, think about how much stand-up that you've watched that you're like, this sucks. I mean, I think,
tons.
When we talk about sort of the, like Pareto distribution or like Mark Manson's 99% thing. I mean, when it comes to stand-up, most of it is pretty bad. And then a tiny, tiny percentage of it is the funniest thing you've ever heard. So it's worth trying to sift through the bad crap to get to the fun stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to say, like, on top of all of the stuff that he was doing online and of which I thought he had a great deal of courage for just risking, getting banned over and over again. But then to translate into, you know what, I'm going to take this leap that is way scarier than that. If he had self-doubts about his like tweets and videos, man, let me tell you, the self-doubts that creep in when you're going to perform in front of a bunch of strangers in some club or bar or the basement of a Chinese restaurant, like wherever it is that you're doing this, it could be a weird place. It almost certainly will be a weird place. Man, that's a lot scarier. It just is. And it takes a lot more courage, I think, than people realize. And anyone listening to this who has done stand-up even once or an open mic, I'm sure can relate. It is. I mean, it's one of those things that like when they say people's top 10 fears or something, classically public speaking ranks higher than death. Like people would rather die than get up in front of a bunch of other living people and speak. It's just so bizarre, but I don't know why we're like that, but we are.
We were talking before we started to record. We were talking about old Las Vegas, like the classic old stuff. There's this bar that still exists. It's still open. It's called Champagne's. There's an episode of Bar Rescue about it. And it was like a Rat Pack hangout back in the day. So that's how old Champagne's is. Stretches back to the 60s and 70s. And they have not changed the decor or anything since. Well, I used to really enjoy going to their open mic comedy nights. And that's where I've never done any open mic stuff. I was purely a spectator, but that's where I began to understand all the stuff that Kevin is talking about. Because you watch people go through this. Oh,
it's
boy.
Painful. It's so painful.
Oh, there's some bad ones, And this is like a Tuesday night. It's not like it's the center of the Vegas Strip. It's just a kind of dive bar. And the only people really there, a couple barfly-ish types, and then the friends of the people performing. They would wrangle a handful of friends who wanted to sit there and drink.
Sometimes, sorry to cut you off, sometimes that's a requirement to get on stage, is that you have to bring a certain number of paying customers. Yes, that is often like part of the game, is that if you want to get on stage, you have to bring 5 people who will buy drinks.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a difference in mood too. Like when you go to a real comedy show, you're amped and in a position to like laugh at things. You're ready for it. You want to very badly. When it's like an open mic night at a bar, people aren't in that same mood. They're not pumped to go see Seinfeld or Chappelle. They're just playing at a bar that happens to have live comedy instead of live music. And it's not
They're
funny.
probably annoyed. Like, let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, they're not paying attention.
People
they're
are
not listening.
annoyed at you for even doing this, most likely.
One of the guys, the last time I went there, one of the guys, his act, he walked on stage and he had a CRT monitor on his head. He'd hollowed it out and was wearing it like a helmet. You couldn't see his face. He did his act as if he was an old computer, and he would, like, in the middle of a sentence, stop and be like booting. Booting.
So dumb.
Yeah, it was really funny for 60 seconds because he was very good at the performance side. But like minute 5 of that, he didn't have a tight 5. He had a tight 60 seconds. And you have to sit through it.
He was a TikTok. Not a YouTube video. Yeah.
Yes. And then some people just are not funny. Their stuff is garbage. It's not funny. Like, I remember thinking I could walk up and say, "Take my wife, please," and get more laughs than this person did. Mm-hmm. Just the hack element would be funny. And then others, there's always like at least one person who thinks that they're really funny when they're really drunk. They're not. They're not. They're not actually very good performers when they're slammed. Occasionally, they can be so disastrous that that's funny. Another one is like, you can tell somebody thinks they're, or they are, the funny friend. And so they're funny when they're hanging around with their friends. And well, why can't you get up on a stage and make everybody else laugh? These are not the same thing.
No,
they're not the same thing at all. And then you watch people realize that they have swung and missed through their own scenario, whether it's, oh no, my CRT computer bit was over minutes ago, yet I'm still standing. Or, just whatever their disastrous circumstances are. And you just watch them slowly evaporate. It's like if the Thanos snap turning people to dust took 5 minutes instead of 5 seconds. Oh, you watch them decay and rot and stink in real time, but it's not real time. It's somehow slower than real time for everybody involved. It is so good. Oh, it's good. I mean, I loved it. I absolutely loved going to those. But that's when you realize, I mean, obviously doing the thing. And Kevin, you did stand up, right?
Yeah, a bunch of times, just in college.
What were your jokes about? What was your? You had to have one thing that worked. What was your best bit?
I can't remember now. Like, and I'm not just saying that because as we have discussed numerous times on this podcast, my memory is and always has been really bad. So I don't remember any jokes. But the style was like a really, really, really poor man's Mitch Hedberg. It was one-liners. So it was like Stephen Wright, Mitch Hedberg style. Although I did try to do storytelling once, and that didn't go well either. None of it, went well. I wasn't any good at it, which, I only did it like 5 times. So, of course I wasn't any good at it. I think, gosh, the rule of thumb on like getting good at stand-up, I think is like 10 years or something. It's like completely ridiculous. It takes forever to get any good at it. I think, the shortest amount of time you could get any good, like even remotely good at it, is probably like 3 years. It just takes so long to develop timing and like understanding sort of what works and what doesn't. And So yeah, what I did was just a lot of what doesn't, What kept me going though is that there was always at least like one guy. And all you need is one guy, or at least all I needed was one guy. If there was one guy out of, 40 people, 100 people, 200 people, whatever it was, who was laughing like consistently, you can keep going sort of without feeling too bad about it, which is weird. Which is weird.
I liked being that guy. Like when I was at Champagne's, so I would always go alone too. I've never been to one of the open mic nights with anybody else. So I would just sit there and have, a lot of beer and just kind of wait for the thing to like gut laugh and scream laugh at. And I remember being there. It's not a big place at all. And if you see it on Bar Rescue, you'll know. And there were probably 20 people there total. And I'd say 8 of them were performers. Most of the people at an open mic night like this are on the open mic.
They're waiting to go up
and hanging out. Yeah, this is not like a tremendous moneymaker for the institution. These are not big nights. That's why they so often get buried on a Monday or Tuesday or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could just explode at somebody's inappropriate joke. And I loved that. And, because it was such a tiny place with so few people, there were a lot of times where I was literally the only person laughing. I was the only one laughing, and I was like scream laughing at a joke. Yeah. I don't know why I enjoyed that. So I had so much fun with it. And I always wondered if that was good for the person on the stage, where it's like, is somebody really enjoying my comedy, or is this just somebody who's like, super drunk and not even listening to me? I was legitimately enjoying their stuff. I remember this guy, I remember nothing about his set at all, except for one part where he was stomping around on stage, talking about taking dumps in the shower and stomping them down through the drain.
Oh, God.
And the way he was talking about it was just, oh God, it was funny. And I was inappropriately loud laughing at him, and nobody else laughed at it. And I was thinking, like, how can you not think this is funny?
Well, for me, from my personal experience, if you had that one guy, that was all you needed to make it through the rest of the set. It did matter. It really did. If it was zero is like, I should just stop, because I'm not turning this boat around. Like, it's not happening. If you have one, it's like, maybe I could get 2. You see what I'm saying? Like, starting from 0 to get to 1 is impossible. Starting from 1, maybe getting to 2 or 3. Hey, I got a shot.
Right.
I got a shot at that. Maybe I could turn this around. So yeah, that mattered. That mattered a lot. And man, you were doing like charity work by showing up to an open mic and laughing at being the one guy to laugh at the man talking about stomping his own feces down the shower drain. That was a good deed that you did.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. It was really funny. I wish I could remember the things that weren't the specific. I had a friend a long time ago who called it the talent show feeling, where you're watching somebody in something like a talent show and they're really bad, but they don't know how bad they are.
Right.
And you feel the embarrassment they should be feeling, and they're not.
Yes. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And it can be a pit in your own stomach watching the train wreck. And when they don't know it's bad, that's the worst. When they're so confident and happy with what they're doing and it just sucks balls from every angle. Oh, it's bad. And I wish I could remember what made me feel that way in the stand-up, the open mic stand-up things. But it happened a lot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's one of the main types of people that will do an open mic. There are essentially like basically 3 types of people. One is just actual crazy people. So like just a lunatic.
Oh, yeah.
Just an absolute lunatic is like one of the types of people who will show up to an open mic. Just bonkers lunatic. Yep. That's one. Another is what you are discussing, which is just person who thinks they're funny and is really not. Like totally delusional people is the other type. just lacking in self-awareness in all capacity. That's like the other type. So you have total lunatic, total lack of self-awareness, which makes sense because when you think about it, like I said, kind of at the beginning of this subject, it is really scary to get up there. So think of the types of people that would get up there. It's total lunatics. It's people who
Right.
who aren't scared because they are just filled to the brim with like unwarranted self-confidence and like total lack of self-awareness. And then the third bucket is people like who could be pretty funny, who are like, who are
Yeah.
like working it out.
They're
like
practicing,
they're practicing,
sure.
They're trying out material. Maybe they are sort of like a lower level comic who maybe, they don't have the cachet to test stuff out in an actual, like as an opener or something at a comedy club. They do an open mic to just throw stuff out there and see how it sounds. That's the third type.
Usually the person running these events is a legitimately
Yes.
funny person who performs.
Yes.
So there's always, the person putting it together is
the host.
usually
The host.
the host. The host is a comic.
Yes.
Now they're not Seinfeld probably,
No.
but
they could
they're
be
gonna do
really
a-
funny. They could be awesome.
Yeah, they're going to do a set that's real.
Yeah.
And so there's always that. I never went to one where the host was a total swing and a miss. Sometimes they were pretty hacky, and you understand like, oh, this is why you're hosting on, Monday at 6:30 p.m. and
Right.
you don't have any Friday gigs. But yeah, there's going to be some semblance of trying and succeeding to, some degree before the lunatics get on, before the do nothings get on.
That middle category is the that's the one where, you feel bad in the audience. You just want it to be over. It's painful. Meaning the people who are self-deluded and have no self-awareness, who genuinely think that what they're doing is hysterical. They genuinely think what they're doing is hysterical. Like they saw, Chris Rock or something, and they said to themselves, I could do that. And then they get up there and they think that they're doing that. And they are not doing that.
No. And, now that you're describing this, I'm remembering scenarios where the person telling the jokes is laughing at their own stuff and they're the only one laughing.
Yep.
Oh, that's bad.
Yep.
That's bad. When the comic is the only one laughing, time dilates to just an impossible
It's Matrix
degree.
Matrix bullet time. Everything just
It is.
slows down.
But you've got to think about the details that make this so bad. There is no music because there's no background music. Like, you go to a bar and there's like noise from the bar and the people talking and stuff like. There is no background music. There's very little background chatter because people are paying attention, even if they, out of politeness, they're paying attention to the open mic thing. It's pin drop territory most of the time. There is nothing to distract or mask the failure. There's nothing. And when somebody just totally blows it, I so I witnessed one of our guests have a joke that didn't happen once. Lou Perez. So I was there was Steve Forbes had a birthday party in Vegas some years ago, and they turned it into a big event. So I was there. This is where the first time I met Lou in person, and Lou was the MC for the event, and he was very, very funny. He was very funny, but he told one joke that was a mismatch for the audience. There was a pianist performing as well.
Which I'll say real quick as you finish the story is another reason why doing stand-up is so hard. Because what works for one audience can be a total bomb for another.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And this was like one of those things where, I've donated a lot of money to be here and people are in tuxes for the most part. I remember buying the ticket for it was like, I had to pay like $200 to get into this. It was bonkers. So, Yeah, it came with a dinner, and you know how it is. There are like 10 people at a table, round tables, and the room is full of them, and there's all these performances on stage. One of them was by Hyperion Knight, who's a pianist, and he's had some success online, quite a bit. He's a fantastic pianist. But Lou made this joke about Hyperion Knight's parents giving him a sexy name as a baby. The name Hyperion Knight was like weirdly sexy for an infant. And there were like 500 people in this room, and I lost it. I completely lost my shit. And I was sort of in the back. I was standing in the back, and it truly was scream laughing.
Which no one, because you've never really done it on this podcast, no one understands what Matt is like when he explodes. when he uses the term "he exploded," that is not exaggeration. That is not hyperbole. When he thinks something, I don't know. I've never met anyone who can laugh harder than you. It is like
it overtakes me.
Truly like a bizarre feature of Matt Tabor, where if he finds something like uproariously funny, he goes psychotic. Like you turn like Super Saiyan, like Goku's hair turning blonde and just having like a glowing aura around him to defeat Frieza. That happens to you. So when you say you were in the back scream laughing, I just wish I were there, because I know that must have been the funniest thing, to just have a room of 499 people stoically deadpan, and then just one moron in the back just screaming until veins bulged in his neck and forehead and his face was beet red, laughing about Hyperion Knight being too sexy of a name for a baby.
This is what you're describing made it worse, though, because as I was laughing, like people were turning and looking, and I could hear. This is the craziest part, and this is how dead the ballroom was. The only thing I could hear was the sound of silverware, forks and knives on plates from people eating.
Oh, no.
That is how quiet it was, other than me laughing. And when I heard those noises, it like this happened in a millisecond, where it occurs to me that I'm the only one laughing at this, and it's wildly inappropriate level of laughter. If I can hear silverware, forks and knives.
Yeah. It's like rude. It's like rude laughter.
Yeah. Yeah, and that realization made me laugh even harder.
Right, you went Super Saiyan 4.
It was a level that I've only achieved one other time, and that was a couple years ago on Twitter. When it was like 12:15, like just after midnight, and there's the tweet of the otter on its back playing in a stream of water, and somebody tweeted me hiding in Abby Shapiro's toilet. I laughed so hard I had to get out of bed because my girlfriend was asleep, and I had to go to the bathroom and shut the door, and I couldn't come out for over half an hour because I laughed that long at that stupid tweet. That's the only time I've ever achieved that level, and it was the Hyperion Knight sexy infant name. But that was not a fit for the audience.
No, audience of one. Yeah, you like locking yourself in the bathroom for half an hour to laugh. I think that is a good explanation, or at least a good illustration for our listeners to try to understand how hard it is that you can laugh, that you are capable of laughing. It's truly freakish.
Yeah, and I mean, the soreness, the abdominal soreness goes like 2-3 days after that. Like, this is not a joke. It truly is like the feeling of like a million sit-ups. My stomach is jello for days.
Yeah, it's Bruce Lee wearing that TENS machine. Did you ever see that? Like the TENS machine that contracts your muscles?
Yeah. But I was that one person at that moment for Lou, and that same joke. I mean, like, you found it funny with me just summarizing the joke.
It is funny. Yeah, no, I would have laughed.
Really
I would have
funny.
laughed at that. That is a really funny joke. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I've heard jokes before about, like, that is a canon of joke, is like, how do you end up naming a baby like Margaret, right? Like that's a joke that you've heard. Like that joke is more about like old man, old lady names. Like you see this brand new baby and you're like, there's Bill. It's like, there's Bill.
You wipe the slime off its face to reveal an Ethel.
Yeah. Welcome to the world, Agatha.
Yeah. In another setting, and I bet, like that open mic night, that crowd of people just hanging out, normal people, that would have gotten serious laughter. And it was so strange to me that this objectively funny line, it was the old people who were donating to like political causes didn't like it.
They're not going to laugh at sexy baby name joke. No, there's no way. There's no way. They wouldn't allow themselves to, even if they thought it were funny, which I'm sure many of them did. They wouldn't allow themselves to laugh at that. I mean, Hyperion Night does sound like some sort of futuristic romance novel hunk.
I'm gonna paste a photo here in the episode chat so you can see the guy too, because he's a really like Chad looking, clean cut guy in a tuxedo, fantastic pianist. It's not like he's a Victor Borge comedic pianist. Like, no, he's truly talented. And so kind of making fun of his name in the sexy baby name thing is such a mismatch that it's that much funnier. But I do want to wrap a bow on this because there's another element to it. So after that, we're walking around and I go up to Lou. I'm like, that set was incredible. That was amazing, whatever. And this girl came by and just gave us a roll of drink tickets. And I mean a roll, like pulled off, like we hit the jackpot at an arcade game
like
thing.
An arm's length of
pouring out.
An arm's length of tickets.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that turned into those tickets turned into to whiskey. I remember that distinctly.
Wait, why did she do this? Before you continue the story, why did she give you an arm's length of booze tickets?
I think there's no reason not to, really. And I mean, well, it wasn't me. I mean, like, obviously Lou was, doing the show, and it's like, why would you be stingy with drink tickets to the guy who was just on stage?
Mm-hmm.
So I just happened to be in the glow of Lou's presence there. But I made the most. I made the most of those drink tickets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Well, you were.
Yeah, this makes me want to.
You were his.
What's that?
Well, you fulfilled that same role that you did for the open mics for Lou that night, which is so funny to be the guy, that sort of carries your spirits through your performance while other people don't find you funny.
Oh, this makes me want to go to an open mic comedy show with you so badly. Think how much fun we would have witnessing these things again.
Yeah, it's always interesting. It's always interesting. If you're interested in observing human behavior, kind of no place better to do it than an open mic.
Yeah, that's true. And I remember too, I got a lot of entertainment out of watching the people in the crowd too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's because it isn't a normal bar crowd.
It's a motley
people
crew.
Yeah. They're all there for different reasons. They have an insane range of personalities and temperaments compared to the normal bar crowd. I remember one guy who it was obvious that he was forcing himself to laugh when his friend was up.
Oh no.
but you could just kind of tell that he wasn't really laughing. You know, like, you can't see these. Like you said, the human behavior is on display in a very unique way at this event.
It's raw. It's raw. It's naked. You can't hide. You cannot hide in that scenario.
No. Everything, whether you're in the audience or on stage, is laid bare.
Yeah.
Huh. See, I've never thought about why I like this so much until you broke down all these pieces as we talk about it. I'm like, well, yeah, of course this is why I thought it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't do it in I don't know, virtually any other scenario. It's such a unique setup because you are also, you know, you're allowed to laugh, you're allowed to make noise, you kind of are allowed to talk, like, so you can be involved as well, as opposed to, you know, say going to any sort of other performance for the most part. Even stand up that you pay for at a club, you know, people will shout stuff out, but that's kind of annoying, really. At an open mic, it's sort of like there are no rules. It's just all so amateurish that it's, I don't know, it's like the most fundamental version of performing in front of people. That's what I think is interesting about it. You know, I always like fundamentals with everything. And like, I don't know. I don't think it gets much more fundamental than open mic night for everyone involved. Like you said, for the audience and for the people who get up there. It's like, hey, we're all in this weird soup together. Like, let's go. Let's go. That doesn't mean, I mean, we're like sort of romanticizing this as if it is this like endlessly entertaining and like great thing everyone should go to every week. It's not. It can be like brutally boring and like awkward, but that's kind of sort of the ballet of it. But yeah, again, it's like not something you want to do regularly because it can suck really bad. That's just sort of part of the deal.
If you have the right attitude, though, it's awesome even when it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's looking at and appreciating the things that we're talking about here, where you truly have, like, you look at the girlfriend who is mostly embarrassed by the boyfriend up doing the open mic and still has to laugh, and you look at that and you're like, that is unfortunate and hilarious. The comedy itself is not going to be the draw here very often. You may come away with one single funny joke, like stomping feces down the shower drain. Generally, you don't even come away with that. But you can get a lot of entertainment out of the human behavior side.
Yeah, and I will say one thing that's really funny. Before I really do want to tie this back to Donavan, because that's how this discussion kicked off, was that Conrad asked in the chat if you and I had would go to an open mic if we sat together or if we would spread out. So it'd be like, two different laughers instead of us sitting together. I immediately thought of like Stadler and Waldorf from the Muppets. Just like booing from the balcony. That would be a really fun thing to do. But the point of getting into this whole open mic thing and performing on stage is that, that's where Donavan, a.k.a. Cripp Daddy, had gotten to in his career, in his interests, and in his journey as a creative person. And it is a testament to him overcoming that self-doubt that you mentioned, which I don't know how to describe in any other way than it being courageous, and it's not obviously at the level of going into a burning building, but very few things are. So that's kind of an absurdist, extreme thing to compare it to.
When there's the burning building situation, there's a very clear reason to go in. There is not a clear reason to try to do stand-up comedy.
No.
You can live a fulfilling life and make people happy without ever doing it. It is completely unnecessary to do it. You don't like flip a switch and adrenaline takes over and you plow into funny. No, it's totally irrational, and you have to blast through the self-doubt and do something that technically doesn't matter at all. It's a weird thing to force yourself to do that, to deal with the misery and difficulty of the doubt. For what? For probably not even making anybody laugh because you're not good at stand-up forever?
Right. Making yourself feel worse. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like building up the courage to kick yourself in the balls. Like, what is the point of this? And so that level of just blasting through to do it anyway, and then refine what you're doing to actually get the good result, to be funny, to put together an album of your funny. Like, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, so two things at the end here, because I almost forgot to tell this story, and I'm so glad I remembered. So two things. One is that the outpouring of people who knew him and really cared for him has been amazing. It's been really nice to see the amount of people that he touched, the amount of people who just thought he was funny and whose lives he improved with his presence and with his comedy. Now, on the topic of that, years ago, he and Ricky put out a collaboration t-shirt called Disabled and Violent.
And Violent, yeah.
and this came as a result, I believe, of an argument that the two of them had with someone else who was disabled, and perhaps called them, like, what they were doing was violent. I'm almost positive that this Disabled and Violent t-shirt came as a result of some sort of like big blow up argument that they had on Twitter with somebody else who was claiming that, the types of things that they were saying equated to violence, which, we all have heard at this point. Anyway, the purpose of this story is just, I think in many ways this exemplifies what I mean about make something mean something. Okay. Because when you make things, you really have no idea. This is this is going to sound over the top, but it really, truly, it is one of the miracles of life to me. I know that sounds pretentious, but I truly believe that one of the miracles of life, because this is just so crazy that this is true, but it is objectively true, is that you can put things out into the world that have a ripple effect that really, changes other people's lives or creates a moment that you never in a million years would have ever thought possible. But this is just what happens when you make stuff. So they have this argument with this person. They're called, Violent. So they team up and they create this t-shirt, this merch opportunity where it's this like really horrifically drawn, like kind of heavy metal, black metal style drawing of Ricky and Cripp Daddy together with like guns, or like their wheelchairs are tanks or something like that. I don't remember exactly what the drawing is like, but it's in that ballpark. And then it says, Disabled and Violent on it. Naturally, I bought one of these t-shirts because as soon as I saw it, I was like, well, that's amazing. And I need to have that. So, and I wanted to, of course, support those guys. Well, I don't just buy the shirt, I wear the shirt because I genuinely liked it. I thought it was hilarious because it was, and it is. So one day I throw the old Disabled and Violent shirt on and I go down to the local recycling center, just minding my own business. And let me tell you, a woman came up to me that was visibly angry at me for wearing the shirt. She was upset. She was mad at this t-shirt that I was wearing that said Disabled and Violent on it. And I don't recall, I think I couldn't dig up the tweet because I don't know how Twitter's advanced search works. But I believe I did do a tweet when this incident occurred in which I hope that I quoted her word for word. But she said something along the lines of like, that's disgusting, or wow, like real nice, or, what's wrong with you? Something like that.
It's in the episode chat.
Oh, it is?
I just popped it in.
Okay.
Yep.
No class. Oh my gosh, that's so much better than I remembered it. That's so much better than I remembered. She said I had no class. Yo, lady, I was literally at the dump. I was at the dump. I was not at the Waldorf. I wasn't at the Ritz. Like I didn't walk into some sort of white tie affair in my Disabled and Violent shirt. I was at the dump, which is there like a more low class, low stakes public setting than the place that you put garbage? And she said I had no class. So, I'm so glad that was dug up. Who dug that up? Oh, you dug it up. Amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, I searched your Twitter handle in the word disabled, thinking that there's not going to be a lot of competition here.
No.
But there is. You have one more. Lazy kid calling his disabled grandma on the phone from the next room to fetch him another grape soda.
Oh, I love that commercial. That'll be its own podcast.
The benchmark here of a shirt that is so offensive that it offends people at the dump.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's like the ultimate test.
Yeah. It was amazing. So there you go. I thought of that this morning. I was like, it's so illustrative of how this guy, Cripp Daddy, is like getting into Twitter arguments, makes this t-shirt. I buy it. I put it on. I go to the dump to get rid of some recyclables, and some woman who I never met and will never meet ever again saw that. And she probably remembers that. She probably told other people, you're not going to believe this like repulsive man that I saw at the dump wearing this classless, disgusting, offensive shirt. What has this world come to? That ripple effect is one of the miracles of life. It just is. I don't see how you can argue otherwise. It's a beautiful thing that you can do as a creative person, is to manifest those moments. You made that happen. Donavan made that happen. And I'll never forget it. I forgot the words. I'm glad that I tweeted it.
No class.
This is one of the reasons, I've talked about this before. This is one of the reasons that I create things online, whether it's like a tweet or a video, is to have like a digital record of it, because I can never remember things. So I'm so glad that I tweeted that scenario, because man, I never would have remembered no class, but God, that's funny. It's so good. So you just don't know. You never know. You never know how you're going to affect people's lives and change their day and create memories. You just never know. But one of the people who did that for a lot of people was Cripp Daddy, without question. He did that, and it's an amazing thing. So we're thankful for sure. I mean, I'm thankful. He made me laugh more times than I could count, which to me is like the highest bar of a thing that someone can do. I love to laugh. It's one of my favorite activities. That's why I like comedy so much, and that's why I thought he was great. He was a great person to know, and he was a great person just to observe the work that he did and the people that he angered and all of it. It was so great. It was so great. And I'm glad that we were able to at least communicate to some degree the many ways in which he did things, far and above his station, and continued to evolve over the course of his life, So if this is the first time you're hearing about Cripp Daddy, again, check him out. Check out his Twitter feed. I mean, you could just spend days just scrolling through that, and it will be the most entertaining thing that you could do. Just endlessly funny. And also, check out his album. I'll mention it again, Sports Illustrated Comedian Edition. That's it for us this week. We will be back next week. If you want to support the podcast, please become a patron. Go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown. We will be back next week. Until then, see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sid Poke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Videoger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Chelxies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.